Please, a very, very warm welcome to Dr. Varun Sivram.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing?
We're
hungry.
good.
I heard hungry. I'll get you out of here fast. Thank you so much to the folks who are having me here. It's an honor to be at Middle East Electricity and Solar Summit. Investing in innovation. I want to start by telling you a little bit of the doom and gloom, but end on an optimistic note so that we can all eat in a happy mood. Here's quick, in a nutshell, what I want to talk about. First, the imperative. Although it may appear that renewable energy is getting deployed at an astonishing rate, it's not the case that innovation is proceeding at the same pace. Instead, quite the contrary is happening. Innovation in energy technology is slower than innovation in many other industries, from semiconductors to electronics to biotechnology. The imperative in order to combat climate change is to increase the pace of innovation. Now, the good news is that we have lessons from the past to learn from. Notably, we've had two waves of boom and bust in clean tech investment, one in the 1970s and one most recently from 2006 to 2011. Even though both of these waves ended with a crash, I think we now have all the information we need to learn from our past and really push the third wave of innovation forward in a sustained way. And finally, I want to end on an optimistic note. I want to end by saying that this country, the UAE, along with my country, the United States, and many others, 18 other countries, have all signed on to Mission Innovation. And that's an opportunity, a dramatic one, for countries around the world to collaborate on research and development to push forward the technologies of the future. So once we get there, I hope it'll be an optimistic note. But first, the imperative. The power sector is going to be a crucial element of decarbonization to meet the challenge of getting to a 2 degrees Celsius limit of global warming. That's what 195 countries agreed to around the world at the Paris Climate Change Conference. Let me tell you, they raised their hands in triumph, saying, the world has committed to this target. But that's only one of the two fronts in the battle against climate change. Political will was there in Paris, but not the toolkit, not the technologies that we need. The technologies that we need are going to be predominantly concentrated in the power sector. As you can see, the green bar on the bottom, that's the emissions mitigation from renewable energy, the single largest emissions mitigation source in order to reach our 2 degrees Celsius target. Without renewable energy, we will not be able to limit global warming. Sorry. Unfortunately, we're headed toward a world where the current generation of renewable energy technologies is locking out the next generation. So what may look good today may not look good tomorrow. I'll take solar as the example, since many of the prior speakers have discussed solar. The current solar market incumbent is silicon solar panels. I was just talking with the CEO of Philadelphia Solar, who manufactures these silicon panels. Silicon panels have achieved dramatic cost reductions. This morning I was in the Dubai Electricity and Water Agency, and several executives told me how excited they were that the costs have come down. I am excited too, but let's be clear. The costs have not come down because of dramatic innovation. They've come down because of scale production. And that creates a significant barrier to the next generation of solar technology. Because the costs, as you can see on that top right figure, the costs of silicon have come down, making it even harder for a superior technology to break into the market. Now, why is that bad? You may say, look, silicon has dropped by an order of magnitude. Why do we need any other technology? The bottom left panel tells you that over time, as you increase the amount of clean energy in our system, the cost target that it needs to reach is going to move down as well. What's economical today at 5 or 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt hour is not going to be economical tomorrow. At high penetrations of solar, solar actually competes with itself, driving down its own value. I have a piece coming out in the next issue of Nature Energy that sets a long-term cost target of 1 to 2 cents a kilowatt hour for solar. Let me tell you, silicon solar is not going to meet that cost target. Studies of 3 different grids, California, Germany, and Texas have all confirmed the fundamental fact that as you put more solar onto a grid, the value to the grid drops. And as a result, we've seen ourselves get into lock-in situations, not just in solar, but in nuclear energy and battery technology. In nuclear, it's my country, I am embarrassed to say, it's my country that pushed a single brand of nuclear reactor, the light water reactor. And as a result, not a single other brand of reactor can account for more than 10% of the world's nuclear capacity. We have a single locked-in type of reactor. New reactor types, those, for example, with passive safety features, would have avoided the Fukushima disaster. In batteries, who knows Elon Musk? Raise your hand. Come on, I know you guys do too. Elon Musk has a vision to create a gigafactory in Nevada to build thousands and hundreds of thousands of lithium-ion batteries. That's great. You know what the problem is? The problem is the lithium-ion battery is never going to get to 350 watt-hours per kilogram, which is the metric you need, the energy density you need for an electric vehicle to replace the gasoline vehicle. So we're locked out of our advanced technologies, and the imperative is to fix that situation. To do so, we can learn from the past. Whoa. We can't learn from this clicker. The past is dark. To do so, we can learn from the past. The first lesson comes from the 1970s, when the first wave of energy technology innovation happened. For example, in the United States, we were reeling from high oil prices, and we increased our public funding for innovation by nearly 3x. We learned from that boom and bust that innovation is not linear. It's not the case that the government can just put money in that first step, basic science. Instead, what we found is when the government put money in that first step and then withdrew it in 1981, the private sector did not pick up the research and run with it. So rather than invest only early on in the innovation cycle, the government needs to support innovation throughout all of the phases. Now here's a graph of United States funding for innovation from 1953 to 2013. As you can see, the green bars are energy. The green bars are smaller than health, they're smaller than space, and they're way smaller than defense. Our military budget is not even on this graph, and it's bigger than all the bars here. And that reflects how energy is not a main priority for the United States yet, but it should be. We had a boom and a bust in the 1970s. We had another boom and a bust right after the financial recession in 2009. I'm sorry? What is? The red, general science research. General science research, basic physics, for example. This trend is true also internationally. Around the world, countries poured money into renewable energy in the 1970s, and they poured money into renewable energy in 2009, but we are currently in a bust phase. The bust phase is public and private. The venture capital boom happened from 2006 to 2011. The peak was in 2008. But after 150 renewable energy startups went bankrupt, venture capitalists have pulled a lot of their money out of the sector. And as a result, venture capitalists have received higher risk on their clean tech startups and lower returns than software or medical technology companies. All of this tells us that today in 2015, funding for innovation is far lower than funding for deployment. Look at those bars. Venture capital at $4 billion, corporate R&D at $15 billion, and total finance for project deployment is all the way up at $425 billion. It's more than a 10-to-1 ratio. That tells us that the world is focused on deploying today's technologies, not on innovating in tomorrow's. But we have an opportunity, and that opportunity is mission innovation. The United Arab Emirates was one of 20 countries around the world, including my country, the United States, to pledge to double research and development funding by 2020. If we do that, we'll reach a goal of $20 billion, much needed resources in order to develop the next brand of technology. What could those technologies look like? I worked on one of them in Oxford University, and this is the article we wrote in Scientific American. These are perovskite solar cells. Solar cells that you can make on a polymer, on a window. They can be transparent, they can be colorful, they can be whatever weight or cost you want them to be, and they're made with earth-abundant materials. But I worry that technologies like this one that we developed in the lab will not make it out to the market. I'm worried because the energy technology innovation ecosystem is not made to bring technologies from the early research phase to the commercial deployment phase. And if these technologies languish in the lab, the world will not benefit. Here's our strategy. Can we take Basim's existing silicon panel and can we put a perovskite layer on top of it? If we can do that, we might be able to do a 2-for-1 piggyback strategy to take perovskite solar into the mainstream. And once we take it into the mainstream, we may in fact be able to make freestanding perovskite solar cells. Here I'm showing you what windows could look like. This is only one of the many opportunities for new storage technologies, new hydrogen fuel technologies, and certainly new solar technologies that we can develop if the world comes together and collaboratively funds mission innovation. I'm excited about it, and I hope you are too, and I'm also happy to take any questions you've got. Check out our blog on the CFR website at cfr.org/blogs. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for that. Indeed, we'll all be checking out your blog. I think we have some great new ideas there. Please, sir.
Thank you. Very interesting. My name is Basim Saleh. I'm the guy he's talking about with the manufacturing facility. It's interesting. I think the takeaway is definitely we need to keep pushing on the R&D side, and I think this initiative is very important. But the other takeaway comes from the previous Masdar speaker, which is that this is really a market pull rather than an R&D push to the market. So the reason there's a lot of investment on deployment now is because it's actually in the money. Solar is now at parity with, in most countries in the world, even with the lower oil prices, by the way. So with solar at 5 cents here per kilowatt hour in Dubai, which is not the norm, obviously, but you can do 10 cents, 8 to 10 cents anywhere now, and you're still in the money. So that's really the main thing. And I think what we need to do is to look at how the market should pull this technology. It has to be cost effective. It has to be easy to penetrate major markets. It has to be bankable. I mean, all this is something scientists such as yourself should start looking at. And that's very important.
So I think he's right on that last point. He just called me out, but was pretty nice about it. He said, hey, scientists like me should be looking at this. Yeah, we absolutely should, and we don't do a good job. But I disagree with everything else you said. Let me tell you why. You can have market forces like what we have today. Commercially available solar panels are in the money, so to speak. They're at grid parity, and that's how they're being pulled into the market. But for the same reason that they're being pulled into the market, emerging technologies are not being pulled into the market. They're actually being repelled. And the reason is you cannot only have market pull effects. Without technology push effects, you will not get new technologies into the market. Here's what I worry about. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that we are currently in the money, that silicon solar panels can be deployed at scale at 6 cents a kilowatt hour, even lower. You forecast forward 1-2 decades. Deep into the future, we're going to get to a point in 2050 where we have to have at least 30% penetration by energy of solar power. And if you've got 30% penetration by energy, your cost target is not going to be 5 or 6 cents anymore. It's going to be 1 or 2 cents. And at those rates, I don't think we can afford to be on a path, a simple glide path of incremental improvements to current technology. We need revolutionary improvements. Revolutionary improvements do not come from market pull.
Okay, I'm not going to let this become, I'm going to put you on stage and talk to him. I've got tons of people who want to talk to him. So I'm giving up my fireside chat with him, and I'm not going to trade it for yours. But here, you can quickly return, and then I'm going.
Thank you. Just quickly, that's the reason why Elon Musk and others are going towards storage, by the way, because of the penetration issue. And I think it's a market pull. Again, it's a market pull, and it has to be a market pull. It will make sense, and we will get to a 1 to 2 cent per kilowatt hour. If these technologies make sense, they will follow that trend. It has to be a market pull. I stick to that.
Varun, we have a lot of questions here, so I really want to get them. I've got about 3 going on in this area at the moment. So let me come to you quickly, sir, and then I'll be right with you. And Jan might have a few on that side too. Sir.
Yeah, I'm the managing director of the Solar Research Center at COST, and I'm sorry to tell you that I don't agree with what you have been telling us today you should read basic textbooks on solar PV and on innovation. I'm sorry to tell you this kind of thing. I agree. The technologies will come to the market when they will be ready, and the image you give of perovskite is completely wrong. They are not ready because they are not reliable, they are not stable, and they will come to the market when the stability issue will be solved. And again, the matrix is the cost of electricity. So you can try to show very nice windows with perovskite or perovskite on silicon. The question is, what is the final cost of electricity? And the important point is the lifetime, the warranty you can bring to the market. And today the warranty is 25 years. Mm-hmm. So today OPV is not cheap, hybrid solutions are not cheap, perovskites are not stable, they are not ready to come to the market. And we are working on this, in these technologies. And the main reason why silicon made it is because it is robust, it is abundant, it is non-toxic, and it is largely available. But it is coming from microelectronics, and then silicon for solar PV benefited from the 50, 60
Absolutely.
years of development of microelectronics. But there is no contradiction between the silicon path and the new technologies coming to the market. And even if the big companies working in silicon will not make it, you know that startups will make it, and sometimes they will better fit the market expectation than what the big companies will forget, which is fitting exactly what the market needs and
Can
not
I take a
fitting
stab at
what
answering?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And I really appreciate the comment. Look, this would be no fun if there weren't disagreements. So I'm glad I've gotten some flack from both of you. But this is really important. I agree with many of the things you just said. For example, it is the case that 25 years of reliability really makes the economics of solar work. And if you had 5 years fewer, or 10 years, or 15 years fewer, your LCOE would increase quite dramatically. So I agree with you. I also agree that OPV, organic, or perovskite solar cells, these newfangled things coming out of labs, don't yet have the reliability track record. Look, silicon panels have been up in the National Renewable Energy Laboratory for 30 years now, and they have lots of data to prove their reliability. We don't have that yet. But where I don't agree with you is that if we just sit back, the market will pull these technologies when they're ready. Because that is a dangerous stance to take. There are fundamental structural dissimilarities between the energy market and other markets where innovation will naturally enter the market. Look, I like to think of the example of Moore's law. You mentioned the dramatic advances in microelectronics. You're right. The computing power on a chip has increased by a factor of 1 billion in 50 years. The efficiency of a solar panel is increased by a factor of 2 in the same 50 years. You don't have the same pace of innovation transfer from academia into the industry. You don't have companies like Intel that spend 20% of their budget, their sales revenue, on R&D. You spend less than 1% of your sales budget on R&D in many solar firms. Because of these structural barriers, I don't think it's fair to let the free market try and pull these innovations. I think we, as public policy and as citizens of the world, need to do a whole lot more to push those technologies to maturity. Again, we can agree to disagree on this. This could be a free market versus public interventionist ideological conflict. But let me tell you, the data isn't kind to how well energy technology is done compared with other technologies.
Okay, I mean, and we'll hear more about that tomorrow at the panel, because I think I really want to see you two in action tomorrow. We've started it today, it's going to be great. And I think one thing without doubt we love your impatience. So please, this question, sir.
Stephen Goldie, City Planning Advisor, Alain Municipality. Firstly, I'm a planner, so I appreciate the difficulty you have in talking on a 10, 20-year horizon, and people are talking here on a 6-month horizon. But to my question, you mentioned that lithium-ion won't achieve the energy density that you require. What's your position on solid hydrogen?
On what?
Solid hydrogen. Hydrogen hydrides and other things that are being produced for batteries.
So I'm going to answer this in 2 ways because storage is not my core competency. There are a lot of battery chemistries that are alternatives to lithium-ion that may or may not take off. Right? It would be presumptuous of me or anyone else to say, you know what, it's magnesium ion or lithium sulfur that's going to be the battery of the future. So I think diversity in battery technologies is going to be important in the sorts of funding that public agencies perform. The second, which I think you're asking about, is what's the future of hydrogen as a storage mechanism? Hydrogen is a very appealing alternative to batteries or other sorts of energy storage because hydrogen can kind of do it all. If we found a way to do artificial photosynthesis, meaning we harness the power of the sun to split water and create hydrogen fuel, we wouldn't have to worry about the intermittency of sunlight because we had a storage mechanism in the hydrogen. And the hydrogen could power not only electricity grids through fuel cells, it could also power cars through fuel cells on vehicles. Hydrogen could do it all. That's why Bill Gates, when he named his 3 major research priorities, named solar fuels or artificial photosynthesis his #1 priority. I forgot to mention that Bill Gates and 28 other billionaires have stepped up to replace the venture capital that fled the sector. So I'm excited for Bill Gates and his hydrogen research. His other 2 goals, by the way, were perovskites, and his final goal, I think, was new storage chemistries, for example, lithium air. So that's why I'm excited about innovation and the new players.
Stay excited. We have a few more questions here. Sir.
Thanks for your presentation. My name is Rita Sabuni, Managing Director of Energetics, which is a Washington, D.C. based energy consultancy.
Nice.
So a couple of things. So Konarka goes out of business. That's a organic solar cell company. NanoSolar goes out of business.
I worked for NanoSolar.
Okay, interesting.
It hurts.
Yeah, okay. I'm curious, if let's say you're walking around this conference and you happen to bump into Sheikh Mohammed, the ruler of Dubai, what would be the advice, what would you tell him on the importance of basic science R&D and why he should invest in it, and what is the best way to do that is best for this region, and maybe avoid some of the failures that we see in the US? You know, what is your advice?
It's a phenomenal question. Because the one thing I'd say to the Sheikh is, first of all, I love the city. I would say research and development funding is something that you kind of have to have faith in, that if you put the money into R&D, things will happen that you couldn't predict. You couldn't direct somebody, Alexander Fleming, to invent penicillin, but he did. Byproducts of R&D are the results of innovation. But that's not entirely satisfying, because I can't say to him, just put a lot of money into it and it'll just work itself out. I also have to say there are a lot of interesting ways that you have to support innovation, and it's best not to reinvent the wheel. Look, we've been trying this all over the world. In my country, in the US, as well as in Europe, it's not the case that you can just plow money into basic science and wait for innovations to pop up. So the Department of Energy has invented a few innovations. One is ARPA-E, which is an accelerator for early technologies that allow these companies to avoid, or researchers to avoid having to take venture money. Another is consortia. It's really important to have companies come together, pool resources backed by the government, and do shared research. If you don't have participation from the industry and from different kinds of investors, you won't have commercialized innovation. And the third thing is just making sure that the government resources are available to be shared resources by entrepreneurs. So in the United States, we have a program called Cyclotron Road. This is in Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and you've got researchers and entrepreneurs who come from all over and get to use the world-class facilities at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab that are public research resources instead of building their own lab. Why build 12 different laboratories when 12 entrepreneurs can work in one lab? So I think these 3 sorts of things are innovations being hypothesized by the United States, and I think it's important for other countries that are joining us on this mission innovation journey not to reinvent the wheel. They can also adopt some of these innovations.
Okay, I've got time for one last question. Who wants it? I can feel Basil just going. Dara. Okay, we'll give you that last one. Round it up for one that will be of incredible interest for everyone. And make sure you give me the best answer in the world that's going to get everybody involved in this.
It's actually more of a comment, so you're more comfortable than a
hook?
question.
You're on the stage later, are you? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow. So the point I want to make, look, basic sciences, R&D investments in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are what made a lot of technologies we have today, including silicon and a lot of the computing power. And those were mainly driven by governments. So this initiative you just spoke about is extremely important. The billionaires joining hands is another extremely important initiative. But eventually, what would see the light is what the market wants, right? So the push has to happen, I totally agree with you, but the pull has to happen as well on the other side. It's really a formula that needs to meet somewhere in the middle. So that's my comment.
I think that sounds fantastic. I think we need push, we need pull, we need you, maybe we need me.
Harmony. And again, just you talk about this mission in innovation, everybody coming together. I mean, it is the trendiest thing in the world now to be involved in innovation and to be seen as an innovator. But do you really feel that the political will is happening around the world, that the money is coming forth, and that, you know, maybe for perovskites and beyond, that there is a future there if people like you drive it?
This is one of those few areas of public policy where the answer is not, oh my God, we got to get people on board. It's people don't know what the right answer is. Genuinely, there are hundreds of billions of dollars being mobilized toward green energy. The political will is there. The challenge now is to make sure that a substantial portion goes to early stage research and development rather than later scale deployment. The will is there. We just have to make sure the policy is sensitively tuned to the right balance of R&D and deployment. And I think your point, Basim, sums it perfectly up. We need both push and pull. So yes, I think we can make this happen. We just need to spread the word. Thanks everyone for taking the time on this afternoon.
And Varun, thank you.